Now, tonight we're talking on the danger of isolation in a corporate context. The danger of isolation in a corporate context. And it is very possible for an individual to be in a corporate context and be isolated, right? It is very possible for that to become a reality with a member or with a believer who constitutes a corporate context, right? So tonight we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 18, verse 1. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 1, right? We're looking at the danger of isolation in a corporate context. What are we looking at tonight, everybody? The danger of isolation in a corporate context. Now, we're going to get to Proverbs 18:1, and of course, we usually use, the New King James translation in this church to read from, right? But tonight, I want to give you all several versions that are quite impacting as it concerns Proverbs 18, verse 1. So we're going to launch tonight from the New King James Version, and then I would like to introduce you all to some different versions in reference to how this verse is translated. Now in Proverbs 18, verse 1, it says, "A man who isolates himself seeks out his own desires." A man who isolates himself seeks out his own desire. Then it says, he rages against all wise judgment, right? He rages against all wise judgment. Now, any word flowing from the mouth of Solomon is a powerful word. And any word flowing from the mouth of Solomon, understand that it has relevance, it has importance, it has significance. We all know that Solomon has been pigeonholed, or he has been classified as the wisest man who ever lived, right? So basically, he's the quintessence, he's the embodiment, he's the paragon of wisdom, right? No other individual received such accolades. The individual who is referenced as the most wise individual in the Bible happens to be Solomon. Now observe what he says in Proverbs 18, verse 1. He says, "A man who isolates himself seeks out his own desire." Then he goes on to say he rages, or he rants and raves against all wise judgment. Now this is the New King James Version. And before I begin to get into extracting some principles into what this verse really means, before I begin to debunk some truth, then first of all, I want to go through other translations, as I said. Now here is the Good News Translation, the GNT translation. It says, people who don't get along with others are only interested in themselves. People who do not get along with others are only interested in themselves. Then it goes on to say they will disagree with everyone. They will disagree with what everyone knows is right. Right? Now, read back that version to me, everybody. People who don't get along. Right? Excellent. Now, that is the Good News translation. And in reference to what the Good News translation says, what I want you all to see is this, and that is a corporate community can have people inside of it, or a corporate expression, or a community can have people inside of it who are not getting along with each other, right? It is quite possible for that to happen. Now, the Good News translation makes that abundantly clear. Observe what it says. It says people who don't get along with others are only interested in themselves. Then it goes on to say they will disagree with what everyone knows is right. Now, here is the Amplified translation. Go ahead and read. It says, "You willfully separate and estranged yourself." Right. Now observe how the Amplified translation puts it across. And the word that I want you all to pay attention to is the word willfully. The word willfully. Because some people will deliberately go against the very grain of what God requires. They'll go against the very grain of what the Word of God says. Right? There are those who exist within a corporate context that will deliberately seek to walk in disobedience. There are those who will deliberately make a move to be recalcitrant or contrary. Right? So the amplified version says, he who willfully separates and estranges himself from God and man seeks out his own desire and pretext. Right? Or he seeks out his own desire and cause. Basically, he's on his own mission. Basically, he's convulsed with a Rambo spirit. His position is, I have no intention of calibrating myself to leadership, and likewise that of any individual who is a part of the community, because his mission is to isolate himself. Right? Now, here's another translation, and that is the BBE. I ain't sure where is the BBE. Right? I ain't checked that one up. Bible in Basic English. Right, wonderful. Go ahead and read. It says, read it again one more time, everybody. He who separates himself for his private purpose goes against. Right, so there will be those who will come in, and have their own agenda. That is basically what he's saying. Right, that it is possible for people to come and exist within a corporate context who will be on their own agenda. Right, he says, he who separates himself from his private purpose goes against all good sense. Right, that is the BB translation. Then the TLB, the Living Bible, says, the selfish man quarrels against every sound principle of conduct by demanding his own way. The selfish man quarrels against every sound principle of conduct by demanding his own way. Then there is the New Century Version translation that says, unfriendly people are selfish, right? And hate all good sense. Say that together, everybody. Unfriendly people are selfish and hate all good sense. That is the New King James translation. Then there's the Today's Message translation, which says, loners who care for themselves spit on the common good. Loners who care about themselves spit on the common good. I like to use the term pee or urinate on the common good. There are those who will come in here and will just urinate or pee on every good thing that we're trying to accomplish in the midst of this corporate context. Right? The Today's Message translation uses the word spit. Right? Loners who care for themselves spit on the common good. Right? So there are those who will come and try to, release some saliva on what we're seeking to build inside the Reformation Life Center. Right? The Today's Message makes that abundantly clear, that there will be those who will come in the midst of you and have no desire to comply or to obey with what you are seeking to build. And it's very important that we understand that. Right? Are we understanding this so far, everybody? Good. So say that one more time. Loners who care for themselves do what? They spit on the common good. Now, in reference to this proverb, and let me go back again to Proverbs 18, verse 1. You go ahead and read it. It says, a man who isolates himself seeks out his own desire. He rages against all wise judgment. Now, let's open up some truth in reference to what we just read. Now, the first thing I want you to understand is this, and that is this proverb is applicable to four multifarious contexts. This proverb is applicable to four multifarious contexts, or any context that is infested with more than two people. Right? Now, in reference to this proverb being applicable to more multifarious contexts, here are the four contexts that I want to identify. And that is, number one, a marriage, number two, a family, number three, a church, and number four, a business. Now, understand that some individuals can exist within a marriage and be isolated. It is quite possible for Roger to be married to LaDonna and for Roger to gravitate towards isolation that results in him creating separation between him and LaDonna. Understand that within the context of a family, it is quite possible for a child or even one parent to separate themselves or isolate themselves from the family pack. Right? So in reference to a family, understand that a family is subjected to the possibility of one individual being isolated from the rest of the pack. In reference to a church, the same is applicable, or the same applies. And even in reference to a business, there are some individuals who operate within a corporate context, and sad to say, they are operating under the canopy of isolation, resulting in them separating themselves from the rest of the individuals who constitute the business. Right? So the first thing I want you to see in this proverb is that it is applicable to 4 multifarious contexts. And they are, what's the first one, everybody? A marriage, go ahead. A family, a church, and a business. Now, here's the next thing I want you to see. And that is the reading of this proverb does 2 things. Write these 2 things down. The reading of this proverb causes 2 things. The reason of this proverb causes 2 things. Keep in mind again that Solomon says, anyone who isolates himself is seeking out his own desire, and more than that, he or she rages against wise counsel. So the second thing I want you to see is in reference to the reading of this proverb, and what I want you to see is that it causes 2 things. The first thing this proverb causes an individual to understand is this, and that is that this proverb, the first thing the reading of this proverb does is to cause a celebrant, where is it? Right. To cause a celebrant, and a celebrant is a member of a church or a worshiper. So the first thing this proverb does is to cause a celebrant to understand what is required of them when they have joined a kingdom community. Right? That is the first thing that this proverb causes. And that is, it causes the celebrant to understand what is required of them as they have joined a community. Now, in reference to joining a community, understand that as long as you've taken up that position or you've made that decision, then you are left with no choice but to ensure that you properly calibrate yourself to that ministry. Right? Keep in mind again that you're now a part of a corporate expression. And more than that, it's very important that you understand that as long as you've joined the ministry, then you've got to ensure that you are integrated into what's happening inside of that ministry. Now, here's the thing that I want you to see that is silly, and that is how it is you could make a move, to join a corporate expression and be isolated. To me, that is nonsensical. To me, it does not make no sense. You have enlisted into something that, first of all, involves a corporate, that involves, a number of people, right? You've made a move that has now enlisted you into a corporate expression. And so with that in mind, it's very important that as you make the move to join a corporate expression, that you understand that the first thing that is required of you is to ensure that you are properly calibrated to the ministry, and secondly, that you are powerfully integrated into what's happening inside of that ministry. So to me, it would be a silly thing for an individual to join a church and have a desire to be peripheral. It just does not make any sense. Because at the end of the day, you have enlisted into something that is corporate. Right? You all understand what I'm saying? I mean, it would be very silly for an individual to make a move to join a corporate expression and have a desire to be isolated. To me, it just does not make any sense at all. It is the most nonsensical thing that an individual can do. To me, as long as you're making a move to join a corporate expression, then to me, you should have a willingness to calibrate yourself properly. And more than that, to integrate yourself powerfully into what's happening inside of the community. Would you agree, everybody? Yes. So from the time you make a decision, from the time you make a move to join a corporate expression, then your position should be to abandon any desire to be isolated. Because you've now enlisted into something that is corporate. Could you look at the neighbor and say, neighbor, this move has catapulted you into something that is corporate. Therefore, you've got to abandon isolation. It just does not make sense for you to be treating the meeting like a drive-through. It just does not make sense for you to be coming to the meeting and have a desire to, move to be peripheral. It just does not make any sense at all, anybody. To me, as long as you made a move to join a corporate expression, then you ought to understand that it is very important that you, first of all, calibrate yourself properly to what is happening inside of that community. And secondly, that you integrate yourself powerfully into what's happening inside of the church. Right? So I want you to understand again issues related to what the reading of this proverb causes. And the first thing the reading of this proverb causes is what, everybody? Read it back to me. Go ahead. Right? So you now have understanding in relation to what is required of you. And so as long as you've joined a corporate expression, what is required of you, everybody? You ought to have no desire to isolate yourself. Can I say that again? As long as you've joined a corporate expression, please understand that you now comprehend very fully what is required of you. And that is, you must abandon all desires to isolate yourself. Isolation is not permissible as long as you're a part of a corporate expression. Tell 3 people you cannot afford to isolate yourself. You cannot afford to isolate yourself. What you cannot afford to do, everybody, isolate yourself. It's silly. It's asinine. It's nonsensical. Right? I mean, it's just the wrong thing to do, to enlist into a corporate expression and you have no desire to calibrate yourself properly. And more than that, to integrate yourself powerfully into what's happening inside of that community. So that's the first thing I want you to understand in reference to, this proverb as a celebrant. So write this principle down in reference to what I just said. And that is, membership requires proper calibration and integration into what's happening in a ministry. Membership, it requires proper calibration and integration into what's happening in a ministry. Now, this principle basically is going to push you to a place where you need to really evaluate or make an assessment as to whether or not you are a member of this community. Right? Because observe, as long as you're a member, then it should give way to you calibrating yourself properly to the ministry, right? That you're a part of. And more than that, integrating yourself into what's happening inside of it, right? So sometimes you have people, who feel they have bragging rights in relation to declaring that I'm a member of this church, but sad to say, they're peripheral. Can I say you're not a member? You're a visitor. You fall within the visitor slot. You fall within the boundary of being a visitor. Anytime it's a case where your desire is to slip into this church, go unnoticed, or anytime your desire is to slip into this church and sit on the fringes or on the edges, then know beyond the shadow of a doubt, you have no bragging rights to declare that you are a member of this community. No, let me set the record straight. You are a visitor because you are treating this meeting as though it's a drive-by. A drive-through, sorry. And once that is the case, know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you have calibration issues. And you're subscribing to isolation. Right? So membership, say it with me, everybody. Membership requires what? Proper calibration and integration into what's happening in the ministry. Ask your neighbor, you know what's going on inside of here? You know what's going on inside of here? Are you connected? Are you up to date? Do you have data? Do you have information concerning Reformation Life Center? Do you understand the present emphasis? You all see where I'm going, everybody? You got people who claim to have membership and they're clueless. totally oblivious to what's happening inside of this ministry. More than that, if you ask them to name 5 people, they cannot even do so. Why? Because they're operating on the periphery. If you claim to be a member, then understand that you've got to be properly calibrated to the ministry. And more than that, you must be powerfully integrated into what's happening inside of that ministry. Got to get away from being isolated. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, get away from being isolated. Get away. Can I use you just to preach to your neighbor? Help me preach to your neighbor for a second and tell your neighbor, come right in, come right in, come right in. Come right in. Get a sense of what is going on. You know, get to know people. Get integrated into what's happening. Operate outside of the confines of just being a late comer on a Sunday morning. Come out on a Thursday night. Come out to prayer meeting. Come out to Bethesda Encounter. Come out to Family Day. I know that one is going to be easy for many of us. Anything that appeals to the flesh, there's always a breed or a conglomerate of people inside of a community that, you know, carries a greater sense of appeal for anything that is fleshly, but that has to change. Right? We got to have some balance. Some of us don't have balance. We are more enthused about the family day than get into the prayer meeting. Things are not designed in the kingdom to work so. You got to look after your spiritual man first. Spirituality comes first, everybody. And we have to be mindful concerning that. Because you'll quicker get people to come to a prayer breakfast much earlier, as opposed to them arriving to your normal, traditional, customary, proverbial Sunday morning service. And that ought not to happen. Tell 3 people, let's get some balance up inside of here. Let's get some balance. Adjust your scales. Your scales are sacrilegious in the eyes of God. Your scales are abominable in the eyes of God. You need to have your scales adjusted. Right? So membership requires proper calibration and integration into what's happening inside of a ministry. Right? Now, here's the next principle I want to extract from what I just said and write this down. And that is joining a ministry abolishes isolation. It abolishes. Well, Pastor Glenn, I grew up as an introvert. And joining a church, you know, is going to be difficult. Joining a church, for me to become, you know, integrated into what's happening and for me to, you know, calibrate myself properly, that's going to be a difficult, daunting task for me. No, by God's grace, you can do it. I said by God's grace, by the grace of God, you could do it. And if you make it a matter of prayer, God can swiftly and instantaneously deliver you from being an introvert to become an extrovert. Not because a person is an introvert, it gives them the right to subscribe to isolation. You do not have a legitimate, valid reason. Your reason is downright baseless. And you have to be mindful concerning that joining a ministry abolishes isolation because you have now enlisted into a corporate pack or a corporate expression. And you have to understand that. My position is, if you want to be isolated, stay by yourself. You hear me? If you want to be isolated, stay by yourself. If you want to be isolated, go into solitary confinement with just you alone. As long as you're talking about making a move to enlist yourself into a corporate expression, then you are left with no choice but to abolish every desire to be isolated. You have to understand that. Right? So this arrangement is about people. And when you come here, you've got to yoke yourself to people. You've got to plug in yourself to people. You've got to connect with people because you've got to understand that part of your survival in Christianity is associated with the relationships that you build. You hearing me? Some of us are still in Christianity, not just on the basis of the grace of God keeping us, but on the basis of right inoculation or right insulation that came from a brother or a sister. Somebody prayed you through. Somebody advised you. Somebody counseled you in the right time. Somebody delivered a timely word to you when you were contemplating abandoning the mission. Right? It was a soul that allowed you to continue the journey. And you have to understand the value and the significance and the importance of people. People play a significant part in you getting to your destination. Please don't sit down there and just say, well, hallelujah, all glory to God, and it's because of him and him alone. No, somebody was there for you at the right time in order to see you through a bad situation. Could you just touch 5 people and say, I thank God for people this tonight. I thank God for people. Anybody could identify with what I'm saying? Anybody could identify with what I am talking about? Doesn't your God work through people tonight, everybody? Doesn't your God strategically plant people in your way who would provide you with a timely word in order to see you through a situation? You ain't getting that if your mission is to sneak into a meeting unnoticed, without being seen, without encountering any visibility. You ain't going to get that. You're going to be operating at a disadvantageous position if it's a case where you are operating like a thief in the night. In reference to you coming into a corporate expression. You've got to come and unveil yourself. Come and give of yourself. Come and jump right into the thick of what is happening, right into the core, into the nexus, into the center of what is happening inside of the community. Because there is where the benefits lies. And you touching a brother, touching a sister, connecting with this one, connecting with that one, forging relationships with that one, establishing relationships with that one. That is where the benefits lie. That is where the remunerations lie. Right? And we've got to understand that. Are we clear, everybody? Right? So say that with me. Joining a ministry abolishes isolation. You're no longer a prisoner who exists within solitary confinement. As long as you've joined a community, understand that coming with that move are issues related to you abolishing isolation. So any desire to be isolated within a community must be canceled, right? Or must be negated. Once you've made a move to join a corporate expression, then understand that at that moment you've got to invalidate every desire to isolate yourself. And I want to make that absolutely clear tonight. So joining a ministry abolishes isolation. Now, here's the second thing that this proverb causes. Second thing, this proverb causes. The second thing, this proverb causes, and that is, it debunks the motives or it exposes the motives of a believer who is a narcissist or has narcissistic tendencies. That is the second thing that this proverb causes. Right? And that is, it debunks the motives of a believer who is a narcissist or who has narcissistic tendencies. Right? So understand that some people are going to join your church who are narcissists, or more than that, who has narcissistic tendencies. Right? And what I want you to see is this, and that is, as long as a person is a narcissist, or as long as a person has narcissistic tendencies, then here's what's going to happen, and that is, they will polarize, marginalize themselves, and operate very leper-like inside of that community. Basically, they're going to make a move to quarantine themselves. Right? Anybody who is a narcissist, anybody who has narcissistic tendencies, right? And you have to understand that, narcissistic behavior is outlawed from the kingdom of God. Here's why: because God is not a selfish God. right? Your God is a giver. Your God is a generous God, right? And so sometimes you have people who come into your community that are narcissists or who has narcissistic tendencies. And so as a result of that, they marginalize or polarize themselves, thereby resulting in them behaving kind of leper-like because their mission is, I've got to quarantine myself from the rest of the corporate pack, despite the fact that I'm journeying with them. Now, that is madness. Just tell your neighbor that is madness. Because keep in mind, you ain't journeying. You think you're journeying. Anytime you're operating from an isolated position, please don't be duped into thinking that you are journeying. No, my friend, you are not journeying. As a matter of fact, you are more desbunged than anything else. You are operating totally flat-footed. The rest of the pack will journey. Those who are calibrated properly will journey. Those who are integrated properly will journey. But anyone who submits themselves to isolation will not be journeying, despite the fact that you think you're doing so. You ain't going a place. Tell anybody you ain't going a place. And I'll tell you this, based on what I studied in reference to how the Amalekites operated with the Israelites, hear me, some Amalekite is waiting to ambush you in order to take you out. You better believe that as long as you're operating peripheral, as long as you're operating on the edges, as long as your position is to quarantine yourself from the rest of the corporate pack, then I guarantee you, not too long in the distant future, an Amalekite is going to attack you and take you out. That is how they operated with the Israelites. They used to wait for those who were on the rear end, the stragglers. And those were the ones who were ambushed. And that is what I'm saying to you. Calibration is important. Being integrated is important. Yeah, you are an introvert, but at the end of the day, you've got to make a move to be delivered from that erroneous position because an Amalekite is waiting to take you out. You come in here as a narcissist, you've got to migrate from that erroneous position. Here's why. Because an Amalekite is waiting to take you out. You come in here with selfish tendencies. You come in here with narcissistic tendencies. I'm saying to you, an Amalekite is waiting to take you out. But here what our mission is in RLC is that we will have no prisoners of war. We will have no casualties. We will have no victims, everybody, because we understand now that big danger awaits you if it's a case where your position is to subscribe to isolation. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, don't become food or bait for the Amalekites. Don't become food. Don't become weight. Don't become bait. Everybody say, I must not become food. I must not become bait. Say with me, no Amalekite is going to take off my head. So tell 3 people now, let's get journeying. Let's get journeying. Let's get journeying. Could you hold them by their hand and just pull them forward and give them a little tug forward and say, let's get journeying. Move. Come out of your comfort zone. Come out of that carnal position. Come out of that unbiblical position. And hear me, there are a lot of narcissists in the church. People who come in with, selfish tendencies. Who come in with narcissistic tendencies. They're only interested in God blessing them. God providing for them. God healing them. God making a way for them. God elevating them. There are people who come in with those tendencies. That if I can only get my personal open heaven experience, separate from everybody else, that will all go well for me. There are people who operate on that low level. It's more I than us. It's more I than we. But at the end of the day, we all want to get blessed together. And I'll tell you this, God is going to bless us faster if we operate in an amalgamated way, as opposed to operating in a singular, isolated fashion. We run the risk of getting blessed faster, everybody. And we better understand that tonight. If we want to get the best from God, if we want to have an open heaven experience habitually, repeatedly inside of this ministry, then I'm saying to you, what is required of us is to come together. That's it right there. That has to be the standard of our operation. That has to be the benchmark of our journey. As we go forward to the finisher, it's very important that we bring ourselves into a state of amalgamation, because God never operates within the boundary of isolation. You cannot marginalize yourself. You cannot polarize yourself. You cannot operate on the peripheral. It's not permissible. Right? So say back that point to me, the second thing in reference to what this proverb does, and that is right. Now, let me just give you all 2 more points and then we'll stop. It's 10 to 9. Now, let's open up this word isolated. Very, very isolates. Very, very interesting word. Very interesting word. The word isolates. A man who isolates himself. The word isolates is a Hebrew word parad. It's a Hebrew word, parad. It means to be out of joint. To be out of joint. It also means to be dislocated. To be dislocated. That is, not to be properly located. Not to be properly located. I like the meaning of the word isolates. It's the Hebrew word parad. It means to be out of joint. To be out of joint. It also means to be dislocated. That is, not properly located. Now, look at what isolation causes in reference to a believer. And it shows you how dangerous isolation is. Isolation is a very dangerous thing. If you exist within a corporate expression, look what happens with you. If your choice is to be isolated, you're considered to be out of joint in that community. More than that, you are considered to be dislocated. Basically, you are not properly located. Now, that is scary. That is scary. Because out of location, trust me, it brings with it God bypassing you. It brings with it God, not even paying any attention in reference to blessing you. Why? Because you got location issues. You are not properly located. You are considered out of joint. More than that, you are considered dislocated. It's the Hebrew word parad. So the word isolates is the word in the Hebrew parad, and it means to be out of joint. More than that, it means to be dislocated. That is not properly located. Now, write this down. In reference to isolation, it produces dislocation. Isolation produces dislocation. Right? I didn't get on the screen. Right. So isolation produces what, everybody? Dislocation. Isolation produces dislocation. And understand that it is quite possible for a celebrant who exists in a community to be dislocated. Right? It is quite possible for a celebrant or a worshiper or a member in a community to be dislocated. Right? So isolation produces dislocation. Say it with me, everybody. Isolation produces dislocation. Look at the neighbor. Say, neighbor, if you isolate yourself in a corporate community, then you are considered dislocated. Right? You have location issues. Right? You are considered out of joint. And hear me, anything that is out of joint is not workable. I'm going somewhere now. I said anything that is out of joint is not workable. If my shoulder happens to become out of joint, what is going to happen, everybody? It will not be workable. Because basically it has now disabled itself because of the deficiency that I picked up. You understand that, everybody? So you've got to understand that as long as you are dislocated within a corporate expression, you're no longer workable. By and large, you're not fit for service. By and large, it makes no sense that the pastor even makes a move to bring you into ministry. Why? Because you have location issues. You are considered to be out of joint. And that spells trouble as long as that is the case. Because it's a case where you are no longer, you are not in a state where you are considered workable or even having the capacity to function. If your finger is dislocated, then you have to make a move to deal with that issue. Because failure to do so will result in you no longer being able to use that finger. If your knee comes out joint, trouble for you. You all understand that, everybody? Any area of your body, if it's a case where something happens to come out of joint, then understand that at that point in time, that thing is now disabled because it is no longer workable. Tell 3 people, parade, parade, parade. Don't have parade issues. So you can't be out of joint. You can't afford to be, because you're no longer you're not workable. You can't be dislocated because you're not workable. You can't be used. What sense does it make if you are dislocated, if you are out of joint, if you're not properly located? Right? So the word isolates is the Hebrew word, again, that means to be out of joint, to be dislocated. That is not to be properly located. So isolation produces dislocation. Now, in relation to dislocation, it has detrimental effects to the physical body, and likewise to that of a corporate expression. So let's look at the detrimental effects of a part that is dislocated. Let me give you all at least 1 or 2, and then we'll stop. So we're looking at the detrimental effects of a part of your body that happens to be dislocated. The first thing in relation to dislocation is this, and that is dislocation produces pain. Anybody ever had a dislocated finger, dislocated shoulder, any part of your body was subjected to, what does it bring on everybody? Pain. Pain. Dislocation produces pain. So to anybody who is isolated, parad, anybody who has location issues, anybody who is dislocated, anybody who is out of joint in a community, what are you going to produce? Could you all talk to me? Pain. What are you going to produce, everybody? Pain. All you're going to be bringing to this community is ow. That's going to be the response of the members who are properly calibrated and powerfully integrated into what's happening inside of the community. Their response to what you bring to the table is going to be, ow, that hurt. You know. So understand that dislocation produces pain. Write this principle down in reference to a community, and that is a member that is dislocated will produce pain in a community. You will produce pain in a community. Can I tell you most of the time the people who will injure you during greeting time? By giving you some kind of cold shoulder or by being irresponsive to you during greeting time, it will be those with parade issues. Those are the ones that are guaranteed to pain you. That when you encounter them, you walk away saying, ow, that hurt. Or you say, oh gosh, I'm injured. Are you in the house? I'm preparing you to deal with people who are dislocated, and hear me, don't let them rob you of your joy. Don't let them steal your joy from you. Don't even let them bring you into, their little personal warfare that they have going on with you. Don't even stoop to their low level. Learn how to take the highway. Because you're dealing with somebody who is out of a joint. All they know to do when they come to the meeting is bring pain. Why is it right there? Because they got parade issues. So a member that is dislocated will produce pain in a community. They will do things to injure you. They will do things to hurt you. They will do things to harm you. Because at the end of the day, their position is, I am given to isolation. So you see this greeting thing? I'm doing it from the standpoint of obedience, but by and large, I really don't want to do it. Because my position is, I want to be parade. I want to be out of joint. I want to be dislocated. I want to be not properly located. Are you in the house tonight, everybody? So tell your neighbor, please, be a member that doesn't cause pain. Don't be out of joint. Don't be dislocated. Don't have location issues. Are we getting this tonight, everybody? Yes. When you interact with people, don't let it be an ow moment, or that hurt, or I'm pained, or I'm injured, or you harmed me. Please, let's avoid those kind of things happening in RLC. God is calling us into a state of amalgamation. Every desire to be parade, out of joint, to have location issues, to be dislocated, has to be abolished, everybody. Understand that as you come to this community, please don't come with the intention to cause pain. As a matter of fact, I'll go finish on that note, telling you about that aloud. As you come to this community, don't come with the intention to cause pain. Out of joint. Dislocated. Not properly located. And I'll tell you this, as Hans so rightfully said a couple Thursdays ago, this community has such a strong unity culture. Unity is such a huge muscle inside of this church that it carries the volume to expose you. It does. Some of you could identify the ones who are badly located. Some of you could identify the ones with dislocation issues. And what I'm saying to you in your interaction with them, please protect your heart. Because some of you could really make you become revengeful. But learn how to take the highway, everybody. All for the honor and glory of God, and likewise for yourself. So the finger come out of joint, it produces pain. And as you said that, I like that. Pornocast. Flesh and blood did not reveal that to you. Had to be my Father who is in heaven. Basically, you need help. You understand that, everybody? I like that. Tell 5 people go on pornocast. Go on pornocast. You're out of joint. Join the next prayer line. Go on a fast, seek deliverance. You cannot continue to be a part of a corporate expression and have location issues. And that is why even in relation to how we sit inside of this church, you'll recognize that it is very systematic, very methodical. And there's a reason for that. I intentionally designed our seating arrangement the way how it is. Because think about it, and I've encountered numerous churches I've been to. I go into the church, some on this side, one way over in the corner there. And next one way up to the front here. You know, I mean, and some of you, you've seen it. Some of you have traveled with me, and I address it. it just reflects an image that does not send a strong sense of being unified or operating as a community. You are and that's understand that is people's personal preference. They come in and, 3 rows are filled to the front here, and that is basically the numbers that they walk into. Instead of coming up, and forming a row behind, they'll go way over there and look contrary or sit down by their by their lonely self. I just hate to see that with a passion. You understand what I'm saying? So again, even in reference to our seating arrangement inside of here, it is strategically done because you have to understand that unless we seat ourselves this way, there's no way we're going to be able to obtain unity. You must be willing to be within arm's reach of a brother or a sister. Would you agree, everybody? Ain't it good just to be able to touch a brother or a sister? Just do it now and see the response you get. I'm sure you get a smile, you get a chuckle. You see what I mean? Look at Gail. You know what I'm talking about? You see what I mean? So the motto in RLC, everybody, as we journey together is this, and that is no pain. No pain. Could we invest in that? No pain. Declare it again, no pain.
No pain.
Yeah, tell your neighbor, no pain, no pain. No pain. No pain. Don't be out of joint. Don't be dislocated. But ensure that you're properly located. Don't have parade. Everybody say parade. Issues. As you're a part of this community, let us move as one and let us move together. Amen, everybody. So tell your neighbor, let's create a greater hookup in this season, man. Let's create a greater hookup. A greater hookup. More love. More kindness. More respect. Right, everybody? Learn to smile more. Some of you need to go in the mirror and practice. Learn to laugh. Bring an expression of joy as you come into the corporate context. And don't come looking as though you're sucking, an orange. Right? Am I making myself clear? We love each other. Let me keep it that way. Amen? Amen. God bless you all.